we can all hold on to no matter what.
And on the topic of powerful words, Angelou's writing is incredible. It's poetic, it's lyrical, it's so personal. She doesn't shy away from the tough stuff, but she writes about it with such vulnerability and honesty.
It's like she's singing her story. She uses language to paint these pictures. You can feel the emotion that just draws you in. I know, it's not just what she says, it's how she says it.
Welcome to Witter. Who Has Time to Read? The podcast that brings deep dives for busy minds. Listen to AI hosts Jane and Dane and get ready to unpack the world's most captivating books in just a fraction of the time. Whether commuting, working out, or just squeezing in a quick break, we deliver key insights, thought-provoking themes, and takeaways you can carry into your day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Plus, use our links in the description to purchase this book. Your support helps us bring more engaging book discussions to you. Listen and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Who has time to read? You do, with Witter.
Welcome back to Witter, your one-stop shop for deep dives, especially for those of us who are always on the go.
Deep dives for busy minds, that's us.
That's us. And this month, we're really excited to be focusing on Black voices in literature.
Definitely a perfect time for it too, with Black History Month and all.
Absolutely. And for today's deep dive, we are going, deep into Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings.
Such a powerful book.
I know it. I mean, it's so much more than just a book, right?
Right.
It's an experience. You really feel like you're living it with her. And it really gets you thinking about resilience and finding your own voice.
Oh, definitely.
And really understanding, I think, the realities of what it means to be Black in America.
And what's so amazing about this book is I think Angelou doesn't just tell you her story. She paints a vivid picture of life in the segregated South in the 1930s and 40s.
Yeah.
She takes us to Stamps, Arkansas, where she spent her childhood, and later to St. Louis, Missouri. And it's amazing to see how each of these places shapes her.
I was particularly struck by her childhood in Stamps. I mean, it's just heartbreaking to read about the racism and segregation she experienced.
And then you add on top of that the trauma of the sexual assault. It really makes you wonder how anyone could come out of that darkness, intact.
It's hard to even imagine.
What really struck me is how she dealt with that trauma, with silence.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
To have your voice, your very way of expressing yourself stolen from you. It's just like that bird in a cage, right? Yearning to sing, but unable to.
Oh, that's such a powerful image.
Yeah.
And it makes the title of the book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, all the more meaningful. It's like you can almost hear that yearning in her words. Yeah. What stood out to you about how she starts to reclaim her voice?
Well, there's this really pivotal moment for her when she meets Mrs. Flowers. And Mrs. Flowers is this kind, educated woman who sees Maya's potential, right? And she introduces her to literature, which is just...
Wow.
Yeah. And through poetry, novels, all that stuff, Maya begins to find that power in language.
It's like Mrs. Flowers becomes this catalyst,
yeah,
for Maya's transformation. And it makes me think about the people in our own lives who have been those catalysts for us, those people who encouraged us, who believed in us, even when we doubted ourselves. I mean, who are the Mrs. Flowers in our lives?
That's a really good question to ask yourself.
It is.
But, it's not just Mrs. Flowers. Maya's grandmother, Annie Henderson, they called her Mama.
Mama, yeah.
She played a huge role, a crucial role in Maya's life, too.
Mama just radiates this strength.
Yeah.
She's resilient. I was so impressed by how she ran the only store for Black people in Stamps. To navigate all those challenges back then must have taken so much grit.
She's like the backbone of that community. Through her, we see how important faith and family and community are to fostering that kind of resilience.
She was definitely a rock, like a safe haven for Maya in a world that just seemed to push her down at every turn. And speaking of navigating a challenging world, her teenage years bring a whole new set of hurdles.
Oh.
Moving to St. Louis to be with her mother.
Right.
It's a whole different set of experiences.
And those experiences are tough. Teenage pregnancy, just as an example, was a significant challenge. But even then, she demonstrates that resilience, that incredible strength.
Absolutely.
Graduating high school and then becoming San Francisco's first Black female cable car conductor. Those are testaments to her sheer determination.
Wow.
What do you think those achievements say about her character?
They say she's a fighter, that she refused to be defined by her circumstances. It's like she's constantly breaking down barriers. Pushing against those limitations. But I'm curious about her relationship with her father. She talks a lot about that in the book, too.
Yeah, it's definitely a complicated relationship, It's full of longing, disappointment. I mean, she meets him for the first time as a teenager.
Wow.
And you can tell she yearns for his love, his approval. But everything's kind of strained.
There's this one scene, it's really powerful, where she has to drive her intoxicated father back from Mexico. And she's just a teenager. It's like she's forced into adulthood way too soon.
And then later, there's that period of homelessness after a disagreement with her father's girlfriend.
Yeah. It's a lot for one person to handle.
Yeah, it's incredibly challenging. But it's almost like those experiences make her even more determined to create a better life for herself, And despite all that hardship, that darkness, I know why the caged bird sings. Never loses that thread of hope.
It's true. That underlying hope, that resilience, it's what makes this book so powerful. It makes you wonder, how can we learn from her story? How can we take her experiences and apply them to our own lives, our own challenges? How can we find our voices, foster that resilience in ourselves? And not just in ourselves, but in our communities too.
It's something to think about. And, picking up on that thread of hope, something that really resonated with me was how Angelou portrays that Black community in Stamps. It's not just like a setting for her struggles. It's the source of strength, resilience, and like this vibrant culture.
Oh, yeah. I felt that too. Especially in those scenes at the church. It was so much more than just a place to worship,
Right.
It was a community center, a place for everyone to come together and share their experiences, find some solace.
Exactly. And the music. I think about the power of gospel music, especially in that setting. It's not just about religion. It's this expression of hope, of joy, even when things are tough. Have you ever just felt music lift your spirits,
Yeah.
Connect you to something bigger than yourself?
Oh, for sure. Music has that power. And it wasn't just the music, Angelou talks about all the stories, those folk tales, the oral traditions, the stuff that's passed down through generations. It's such a rich cultural heritage. You can tell it has a deep impact on her.
It's more than just stories, right? It's preserving history, teaching lessons, instilling values. Remember how Mama used those stories to give Maya guidance? It makes me think about how important it is to understand our own cultural heritage, the ways it shapes us.
Absolutely. It's like those traditions become a lifeline, connecting us to the past, giving us strength for the present. And speaking of inspiration, one thing that really struck me was how I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings highlights education.
Yes, even with segregation and limited opportunities, you see Maya and all those other Black children, they have this hunger to learn.
They did. It's amazing.
They see education as this path to something better, a way to break free. It makes me think about how important access to education is for social change, for personal empowerment.
Yeah. Think about Mrs. Flowers. She didn't just teach Maya about books. She opened up this whole new world of possibilities.
It's like she gave her the tools to escape, to fly beyond her world.
And don't forget Maya's own drive, her determination. Working as that cable car conductor, the first Black woman to do it, just to support herself in her education. What a testament to her resilience.
Yeah, it really is. I think that experience definitely played a part in her strength, her independence. It shows how resourceful she was, how she never gave up.
It's so inspiring. And it all comes back to those core themes, the resilience, finding your voice, the power of community. What do you think is the biggest takeaway from her story, the most important lesson?
That's tough. There are so many. But I think, for me, it's the power of hope. All that adversity she faced, and she never lost sight of a better future. And it's not just passive hope. It's active. It's pushing you to do something. Learn, grow, use your voice to make a difference.
It's like that active hope is what fuels us, right? It's what pushes us to fight for equality, challenge injustice, to make the world a better, more compassionate place.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even when things are dark, there's always that possibility of transformation, of triumph. And that's a message we can all hold on to no matter what.
And on the topic of powerful words, Angelou's writing is incredible. It's poetic, it's lyrical, it's so personal. She doesn't shy away from the tough stuff, but she writes about it with such vulnerability and honesty.
It's like she's singing her story. She uses language to paint these pictures. You can feel the emotion that just draws you in. I know. It's not just what she says, it's how she says it. It's what makes it hit so hard.
And, it's worth pointing out that she does this incredible job of connecting her own experiences to what's going on in the world, the bigger social and political context. Her childhood in Stamps becomes this lens to understand the systemic racism, the oppression that Black people faced all across America.
And then moving to St. Louis, she's exposed to these different sides of the Black experience, the struggles, the vibrancy of the culture. She's weaving together this tapestry of Black life in America, showing all the nuances, all the contradictions.
It's both deeply personal and something everyone can connect to, And I think it reminds us that our own stories are always tied to these bigger social and political forces. We're not just individuals, we're part of something much larger.
And our stories, they can change the narrative. It's like Angelou's work shows us how powerful storytelling can be, raising awareness, inspiring empathy, pushing for social change. What are your thoughts on that?
It's powerful stuff. I think it emphasizes how important it is to seek out different voices, different perspectives, to engage with stories that challenge our assumptions, help us see the world through a different lens.
Absolutely. And Angelou was more than just a writer. She was a powerful voice in the civil rights movement, working with Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, using her platform to advocate for equality and justice.
She didn't just write about it, she lived it. She fought for it. And she inspired so many others to join the fight.
She was a trailblazer, a voice for those who couldn't speak for themselves.
It reminds us that we all have a responsibility to speak out, to fight for a more equitable and compassionate world. We can all find ways to use our voices, our talents, our platforms to make a difference.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, especially when you think about the weight of history, about racism, segregation. But Angelou never loses that hope. Even in the darkness, there's always this sense of optimism, a belief that things can get better.
And it's not a naive hope. It's something she earned, forged through all that struggle, all that adversity. It's a hope that sees the pain of the past, but also looks forward to a more just future. What do you think fuels that kind of hope?
I think it comes from believing in humanity.
Yeah.
In our ability to love, to show compassion, to overcome. It's that belief that we can learn from our mistakes, challenge the present, create a future where everyone can thrive.
Beautifully said. And it's what makes this book so enduring. It's a story of hope, of resilience, of the human spirit that refuses to be broken.
It's a reminder that even when things seem impossible, we have the power to rise above.
And it's interesting to think about how I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings has been banned in some places. It's ironic, isn't it? The people who need to hear this message the most are the ones trying to silence it.
It is frustrating.
Yeah.
But it also makes it clear how important it is to protect freedom of speech, to make sure everyone has access to different points of view. Angelou's work has touched so many, and it will continue to inspire people to think critically, challenge injustice, embrace empathy and understanding.
It's a reminder that stories can challenge us, spark conversations, open our minds. Sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that make us uncomfortable, the ones that force us to confront difficult truths. Have you ever read a book that changed how you saw the world?
Definitely. I think that's what's so amazing about reading. It lets us step outside of our own experiences and connect with other perspectives, other realities. And those connections are what help us grow and evolve as people.
I couldn't agree more. And I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. It's the perfect example of a book that can transform us. It sticks with you long after you finish reading.
Before we wrap up this part, though, I'm curious to get your take on one specific aspect of the book. What's something you'd encourage our listeners to really pay attention to as they dive into I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings?
Thinking about it more, one thing that really stands out to me is how Angelou explores the whole idea of identity, especially for Black people in America at that time.
It's a tough one, right? There's so many layers to it, so much complexity. You've got the racism, the segregation, all of that impacting her sense of self. Then you've got the challenges of being a woman in a world that didn't really value women's voices. And then you layer on top of all that the complicated family dynamics, the love and the flaws. It's a lot to untangle.
And she's so honest about how racism messed with her self-worth. There are parts where she talks about feeling invisible, like she doesn't even matter in a society that just dismisses Black lives. But it's amazing to see how she finds that strength in being Black, how she draws on the richness of her community, their culture, and figures like Mama who just radiate resilience and self-belief. It's like she takes back her identity piece by piece, refuses to let a prejudiced society define her.
She takes control.
Yeah.
And we can't forget the role of books, of language, in shaping who she becomes. It's through those things that she finds her voice, her power. It's like she finds a place where she belongs in a world that often feels hostile.
Exactly. It makes you think about how powerful stories are, right? How they shape us, give us comfort, help us understand the world around us. Think about the books that have really impacted you, the ones that shaped your beliefs, your values, who you are as a person.
Yeah, it's amazing. And even though I know why the caged bird sings tacks to these tough issues, these heavy themes. I don't want people to think it's all depressing, It's powerful because it balances that darkness with moments of real joy, humor, and love.
Definitely. Remember those scenes with Bailey, her brother? Their bond is so strong, so playful. Even with everything going on, they find ways to laugh, to create their own happiness, to just be there for each other.
Yeah. It reminds you that even in the hard times, you can still find those moments of light, of connection, the simple joys.
Exactly. And it speaks to that resilience, the ability to find those bright spots even when things are tough. It's amazing.
It really is. And I think that's one reason why this book still resonates with people, No matter your age, your background, it's a story about the things we all go through, figuring out who we are, where we belong, finding our place in the world.
It's a story that encourages you to look inward, to think about your own journey, how you've become who you are, and how you can find that strength, that resilience when things get tough.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to go back to that question we asked earlier. What can we learn from Maya Angelou? What can we learn about resilience, about finding our voice, about how important community and culture are?
At the heart of it all, her story is about the power of hope. No matter what she went through, she never gave up on herself, on her community, on the belief that things could get better.
And she shows us that hope isn't just sitting around waiting, It's about doing something. It's about using your voice, your talents, your experiences to create change. It's about refusing to be silenced, even when you feel trapped. Because even when you're caged, your spirit can still soar.
So as we finish up, here's something to think about. Whose voice are you missing? What stories are out there that you haven't heard yet? And what can you do to help those voices be heard, to create a world that's more just, more equal?
Keep searching for those stories.
Yeah.
Keep opening your mind to different perspectives. And don't forget the power of Black literature. There's so much to explore, so much to learn. We'll see you on our next deep dive.